President Donald Trump has been back in the White House for a month. One of Arizona's Democratic members of Congress gives us her take on Trump 2.0. And there's a new name in the race for Arizona governor. Our panel weighs in on that and the rest of this week's political headlines. Next on Politics Unplugged.
Good evening. I'm political editor Dennis Walsh. This is Politics Unplugged, and President Trump has begun his second term in office with a flurry of executive orders. Announcements of many of them have already been blocked in the courts. It's a strange time to be a freshman lawmaker in the minority party, but that's where our first guest finds herself, Congresswoman Yasmin Ansari. I want to thank you very much for being here. I know it's been a very busy first month in office. You're adjusting to the new life there. You were on the city council. Very different job. Let's start with that. Your first take on this new Trump administration. You weren't there for the first Trump 1.0. You are here for Trump 2.0. What's your thoughts so far?
First of all, Dennis, thank you so much for having me. You're right. I was not there for Trump 1.0. I actually decided to run for office in response to many of the actions that Donald Trump took in his first presidency. So ironic that I find myself in this position now. I will say, look, I think the first few weeks of the presidency have been nothing short of extreme chaos. The fact that Donald Trump has given his #1 donor, someone who spent $250 million to get him elected as president, that's of course Elon Musk, outsized influence and really the full ability to take over government agencies like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, like the Treasury Department, like the Environmental Protection Agency. I think that's unacceptable. It's of course also unconstitutional, but the amount of phone calls and outrage that my office and I know members on both sides of the aisle have been getting about this constitutional crisis is very, very concerning. I'm grateful that we have attorneys general who have been able to fight back via lawsuits, and of course we're doing what we can in the minority, but it's been extremely chaotic. And just want to also point out, really no actions have been taken to lower costs for American families or deal with economic issues. It's mostly been around.
We'll get to that in a second. Let's talk a little bit about DOGE and that Office of Government Accountability. They're out there. They're looking to trim government costs. And the argument is, at least from the Republican perspective, as I understand it, is that you look at the federal bureaucracy and they would say, look, it has gotten way out of control. It has gotten so bloated and so large. And their influence is such that they're almost a fourth branch of government. They're unelected. Why not go through, look at these offices and see where we can make some cuts?
So that sounds great. That's absolutely not what's happening. Under the guise of creating efficiency, Elon and about 16 or so Doge bros, like literally 20-year-olds without any sort of vetting, have completely taken over agencies. They've told people not to come to work at all. They're trying to force federal employees out of the workforce, and they are illegally getting access to people's data, financial information through the Treasury Department. That was one of the lawsuits. So this is not about efficiency. This is about making Elon Musk richer. They're trying to trim funds so that when the tax fight comes up in a couple of months, they can extend tax cuts for corporations and people of their wealth caliber.
And being in the minority party, it seems like options are very limited over there. What do you think there's anything that the minority party can do right now to try to rein in DOGE and try to rein in what you're saying is what you think is unconstitutional?
So I serve on the House Oversight Committee, which is really the key committee to hold the administration accountable. Of course, we are in the minority. One of the actions we tried to take during one of the recent hearings was to subpoena Elon Musk to simply come in and answer questions about his plans and what DOGE is doing. Not one Republican voted to do that. Overall, House Democrats, we are in the minority, but we're fighting back legislatively. We've introduced legislation such as the Taxpayer Protection Act to protect American taxpayers' data, personal data, from being accessed by DOGE or Elon Musk or whomever. Look forward to seeing if any Republicans sign on to this. I will say privately, I think Republicans have expressed concerns not only to me, but other members, that they are concerned about what's happening. It remains to be seen whether anyone comes out publicly to express that concern.
Now, you're talking about Republicans talking to you privately. We've seen this. We saw a lot of that in the first administration and whatnot. Like, Democrats will say, well, even Republicans are really concerned and whatnot. I do want to ask, about a month away from a government shutdown, and it appears that Republicans are likely going to need some Democratic votes, as they had in the past, to either pass a continuing resolution or some sort of budget deal to keep the government open. If there's no deal done in a month from now, we could be looking at a real government shutdown. Again, are you willing to give your vote to a Republican-sponsored budget or a continuing resolution in order to keep the government open at this point?
I will speak for myself. I am not. The actions that the Republicans have been taking, whether it's anti-immigrant policies, whether it's pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement, going after the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, they're also trying to cut Medicaid and Medicare for American families. That's part of the budget conversations that they're having. That's actually why they can't get alignment and get the votes that they need to pass a budget. So I will not be voting for it. And I just want to make one thing very, very clear. If there's a government shutdown, it is the fault of the Republicans. They hold majorities in the White House, in the Senate, and in the House of Representatives. If they want to pass a budget, they should conjure up the votes to do so.
But government shutdown hurts everybody, including your constituents, correct?
It does, but they are the ones who refuse. And if they are going to go after Medicaid that supports the families in my district, I think about 20%, 25% of families in Arizona's 3rd district rely on this vital resource and service. If they even try to touch that, there's absolutely no shot.
Well, and I ask why it hurts everybody, because obviously it's Congress. Deals can be made on just about anything. What would it take? What do you want to see? What kind of concessions would you like to see in order to, pass something that funds the government to keep it open beyond the March 14th deadline?
Well, first of all, the agencies that have been taken over by Elon Musk need to be returned to the American people. With the fact that an agency that's literally designed to protect Arizonans from fraud, from predatory lenders, from abuse, is now not operational and employees are told not to come to work, that is a massive problem for Arizona. And I think every Arizonan, no matter who you voted for, it needs to be said that the president, lied to you. He has handed over the reins of our government to Elon Musk, his #1 donor, a very the wealthiest individual, obviously, in the world. And this is a huge problem for our country. When you say the lied,
I mean, Trump, Republicans have always run on trimming government and cutting government. Where's the lie here?
Again, they're not trimming government. It's a hostile takeover of the government by somebody who was not elected by the American people.
Okay, and a lot of things you talked about the first month, flurry of action. It can be kind of overwhelming. At this point, it does look like the courts are restraining the president at this point a little bit. Are you confident that that will continue, or are you a little bit nervous about that?
I think as long as the president continues to take illegal actions, the courts will do what they need to do. And I'm very grateful for, the injunctions that have been placed already. What I am concerned about is whether or not the administration will listen to the courts and whether or not they feel that they are so above the law that they will defy what the courts are saying when it comes to these injunctions. But again, I'm grateful that we have an attorney general that's taken part in these lawsuits.
Do you think Trump is following Congress right now? I mean, there was a congressional law passed to ban TikTok, but yet TikTok is still opening. There was an executive order that was put out there, but I don't know if an executive order overrides an act of Congress.
I mean, on the vast majority of his actions, he could have, again, he has a Republican majority. He could have gone through Congress and say, I want to reform U.S. aid, that delivers vital national security services to our country, or I want to reform the Environmental Protection Agency. Instead of doing that, he illegally has tried to shut these departments down. These are congressionally approved and authorized agencies. He does not have that power to do so.
All right, we're going to have to end it right there. Thanks for stopping by here. Always welcome, Congresswoman Ansari. And coming up next, I'll be bringing in our panel to talk about all of this week's major headlines, including Karen Taylor Robson officially jumping into the race for governor. Why so early? That's next on Politics Unplugged. Welcome back to Politics Unplugged. We're nearly 2 years from the primary race for governor, but we already have two big names in the Republican side. Businesswoman Karen Taylor Robson announced this week joining Congressman Andy Biggs on the GOP side, and here to talk about that and the rest of this week's political headlines, Republican consultant Marcus DelArtino and Democratic consultant Aaron Lieberman, also a former lawmaker.
Not a consultant, just a citizen with a brain thinking about these things.
All right, let's talk a little bit about this. Karen Taylor Robson announces, seems like it's pretty early. I can't imagine that she would come into 2025 thinking, I want to officially announce my race for governor in February of 2025 for the November 2026 election. What's driving the timetable here?
I think in today's day and age, it's actually, we've been getting earlier and earlier during this whole process. I mean, I think you're trying to sort of insinuate that Biggs pushed her into announcing, but at the same time,
I'm really not insinuating.
Well,
I mean, to me, it seems pretty obvious. This is early.
Everybody knew she was running anyway, so I don't think that this was a big secret. What it does open the doors to is getting her fundraising machine going in high gear, so it's to her advantage to announce now.
Yeah, and what's your read on this? I mean, I don't think, rational politicians didn't announce this early, but to Marcus's point, we did see Ruben Gallego announce almost 2 years before his race. Is this kind of standard now?
Yeah, probably, unfortunately, that's kind of the way the world is moving here a little bit. I think it's definitely in response to Congressman Biggs jumping in the race. And what no one on that side wants, or certainly in the Karen Taylor Robson camp, is a replay of what happened last time, which is she's the more kind of mainstream centrist Republican. I think everyone would say probably has the better chance in a general election, but likely to lose in a primary to a MAGA-type Republican, and that's what we have in Andy Biggs. So there's it's a real battle here. I won a few nice dinners last time betting on Kari Lake beating Karen Taylor Robson. I'd take that same bet right now that Andy Biggs is going to be the primary winner as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the lessons that maybe could be drawn from Karen Taylor Robson's unsuccessful run in the Republican primary for governor a couple of years ago, is that she spent millions and millions of dollars of her own money, could not overcome Kari Lake and the magical endorsement in that primary from Donald Trump. Now, is Karen Taylor Robson going to be able to maintain what I have been calling a soft endorsement? Because when he was here last year, he looked at Karen Taylor Robson at the convention center and said, well, if she runs, she's going to have my backing. That's not an official endorsement, or do you see it differently?
No, I think it's an endorsement, but it doesn't matter whether I think it's an endorsement because the digital ads are already cut, and it looks like he's endorsing her. So that
could change.
They have set that goal. It
Andy
certainly
Biggs
could change.
Andy Biggs is a close ally with Trump.
If you remember back to the congressional race with Abe Hamadeh and Blake Masters, that ended up at the end of the day to be a split endorsement, which was awkward for everybody on the Republican side.
That's a whole new term, right? We've never had that before, where you endorse two people in the same race.
However, what I will say I think is a little bit different in this race is Kari Lake initially was well funded and was able to sort of keep step, if you will. This will be a true test for Andy Biggs on the fundraising side because that congressional district is a lock for Andy, right? And so he hasn't had to work really hard at raising money. So it'll be interesting to see out of the gate how much he's able to produce.
Yeah, and we've already seen, you mentioned that the digital ads came out the day after or the day of her announcement. We saw that. You saw a list of endorsements roll out. You've been involved in one of these gubernatorial races. What is really going on? Take our viewers behind the scenes of what's going on now in this campaign that's outside of the spotlight, outside of the media attention. This is all about a fight to get those endorsements lined up and to get money lined up. Why is that important?
Look, what's typically happening is someone sitting in a room calling people for money 6 hours a day. I did it for a year. It was probably the worst year of my life from a work perspective. But Karen Taylor Robson is in a different category. I mean, she spent $25 million of her own money. She raised a lot of money, too. She outraised Kari Lake. But again, I think she outspent Kari like 10-1 or something like that and lost in the primary. And what we're starting to see is it's so hard to communicate to voters. They're in so many different places. Sometimes it gets so overwhelming when it comes time to elections that the money advantage isn't mattering as much as it used to. And I mean, again, just check out what we've seen in some of these different races. President Kamala Harris spent $1 billion, and no, not the president, obviously. It just gets down to the primary voters. They have their own, feelings about things. It's a very small slice of the electorate. A lot of it will get down to what Donald Trump wants, but who does Donald Trump need something more from? Karen Taylor Robson or Andy Biggs over this next year and a half. I'd be surprised if he stays completely out of it or if he doesn't endorse on both sides like he did before.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the woman, the job they want, governor's job for Arizona. The current occupant, Katie Hobbs, She's listed by the Cook Report as being in one of the most competitive gubernatorial races next in 2026, one of 3 toss-ups across the country. What has Katie Hobbs got to start doing at this point to up her chances of a second term?
Yeah, I mean, no surprise. And the Cook Political Report has us as a toss-up. I think everybody in Arizona knows that. But she needs to start setting herself apart, if you will, one from the other Democrats in the legislature, but the legislature as a whole, and start looking for those opportunities outside of the legislature to message what she's for. Right now, we know her as the veto queen, essentially, for the state of Arizona, and she's joked about that on some comedy shows. And that's true, but that's not enough really to move a voter at the end of the day. What you've got to be able to say is, look, I want the best education for your child, and here's how I'm going to do it. I want the best healthcare system for your child, and here's what I'm going to do it. You've got to be able to find those opportunities to break out of this legislative veto queen.
Yeah, and you're the Democrat at the table. What are you hearing from your fellow Democrats about Katie Hobbs and the job that she has been doing?
Look, I think she's done a pretty reasonable job. She's managed to not blow anything up, which is, everyone was worried, the first Democratic governor in 20 years or something like that. Governor Hobbs has been underestimated in every race that she's been in. No one thought she'd win Secretary of State. No one thought she'd win the governor. And all she's done is win these really tough statewide races. She's going to be a tough candidate to beat. I think she's taken the right path, which is trying to kind of just keep things right down the line. The question is going to be, is that going to be enough? And the biggest question is, who's going to be the opponent? I like her chances against Andy Biggs. I think Karen Taylor Robson, any moderate Republican, has a huge advantage going into a statewide race.
Yeah, but she's going to have some hard decisions to be making. We saw one of them. It's going to land on her desk on Monday, and we know from it seems public opinion when it comes to elections, they want their results faster, they want it quicker, they want it sooner than 2 weeks that it normally takes the state to count these up. The Republicans have passed a measure, and they say to do just that. They're going to send it to her desk on Monday. If the governor vetoes this, as she has signaled that she will do, is she going to pay a political price for something like that?
I think a little bit, yeah. I mean, we talked about this at the beginning of the year, and one of the surprises I estimated was going to be that there would be an election measure that would get to her desk that she would sign, and it was important for the Democratic legislators to give her enough room to do that politically. And it doesn't look like that's happening, and it looks like she'll probably most likely veto that measure. It will be unpopular. They're going to run digital ads against her, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a lot of time left in session, unfortunately. And what I will tell you is I think you will see a rebirth of something that's signable. Not all of her caucus will be happy with it, but there will be a version at some point we will get there that will shorten up the timeline.
All right, we're going to have to take a quick break. We're keeping you guys here, but when we come back, we'll be looking at Elon Musk and his Doge team's task to cut government spending. So why is spending on the rise? When Politics Unplugged continues. Welcome back to Politics Unplugged. President Trump tasked South African billionaire Elon Musk with cutting expenses in the government, but Treasury Department numbers quoted in The Economist showed government spending is actually going up by billions of dollars a day. Let's bring in our panel back and let's talk a little bit about this. You're not shocked by this. And according to that article, the daily expenditures from the U.S. Treasury last year at this time was $26 billion a day. Today, it's $30 billion a day. How can that be when it seems like every day Elon Musk and his Doge team is saying, hey, we found billions of dollars of cuts?
Well, first of all, I should say this. One, it's unfortunate somebody forgot to tell Elon Musk to wear a suit and tie when you are in the Oval Office, because you show the office the respect it deserves. That being said, the money that they are talking about so far in these Doge investigations are not even pennies to the dollar of what our federal budget constitutes, okay? So, for instance, foreign aid, less than 1% of the federal budget, okay?
Billions of dollars is a lot of money to you and me.
I'm going to eat, it sounds like a lot, but when you look at a giant federal budget of trillions of dollars, and remember it takes 1,000 billions to make a trillion, you start to get a perspective here. I will tell you, the other problem here is that when you look at discretionary spending, I'm going to kind of economically geek out for a second. budget. When you look at discretionary spending, only a quarter of the budget, 25%, is discretionary spending. The rest of that money is committed in either entitlement spending, so Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, or debt payments to China, yay, and a couple other things. So your options are, do you want to cut military spending? And that is not a winner for Republicans. But you gotta, if I'm Elon Musk, I gotta hunt the ducks where the ducks are, and I gotta start looking at these discretionary programs. For instance, is there something we can do with Social Security for people that are not even born yet? So that doesn't affect the current class, but at least gives you a little breathing room going into the future. So there's my economic
I'm glad
soapbox.
gave Marcus a chance to nerd out on budgetary policy, so it makes me happy on that. Another key piece of information that came out economically was we saw inflation spike again in January. And Donald Trump doing what all presidents before him have done early in office is you blame the guy before him. How long can he do that?
Well, let's just take one step back. Does it seem like making everything more expensive through tariffs is going to reduce prices? Because that's what he's trying to do. You know what I mean? It absolutely.
There were no tariffs in January.
He tried and threatened.
There were no Trump tariffs in January.
They're going to play this game for a few more months. You know, he's still blaming Joe Biden for stuff. But I think we're going to start to see people say, you're the president now, and the buck stops with you, and let's see if you can do anything to actually get inflation down. I think one of the chiefs of staff, the former congressman from Trump's first term, has been telling people it's easier to go to Mars than to cut the federal budget. And I think you're going to find out, and that's what we're going to see on this Doge stuff. It's going to be true with getting prices down, too. This is very, very hard to do. You can't do it with these, bumper sticker slogans and these kind of crazy, whacked out ideas that the president has. And it's going to be, ultimately the chickens are going to come home to roost.
And how long until Trump starts paying a political price? How long does he have to start trying to get these prices under control? Because remember, he was basically saying from day one he was going to make it a lot more affordable to live here.
Yeah, remember, he's been in the office for 30 days. So right now, it literally
feels like 3 years. Right?
He set expectations.
I understand, but he hasn't he's been in office.
And that's why I'm asking, how long does he have?
I would argue probably about a year before it starts to come, because at that point now you're sort of gearing up for midterms, right? And you're going into year 2, and it's going to be a tough midterm fight. So he's probably got a year of forgiveness, and that means we've got to, stave off any sort of recession. You got to keep gas prices low. You got to get inflation under control, and somehow mysteriously get rid of the bird flu so we can have eggs again.
So let's stick with you real quick. I mean, how do you assess his first month in office? It seems like we saw some polling data last week that said that a lot of people like what they're seeing out of Donald Trump. His approval ratings are higher at this point in his presidency than they were the first time he took over. How do you assess his job?
Well, you kind of stole my evidence of what I was going to point to, but yeah, when you look at his first term in the at the same time, he's up. And this messaging is working, and I expect future presidents to sort of use the same sort of messaging moving forward, which is go in strong on EOs right out of the gate and set the message. What's going to be the tough part, once you get into some of these EOs, like, friends of mine have said, are we really getting rid of the Department of Education? Well, that's not what the EO says. The EO says we are going to ask the department to do a study to look at ending the Department of Education. And so once you get into some of those things, you're going to have to deal with Congress. And we're going to have to see how this Congress and this White House sort of work together.
And unfortunately, we're going to have to give Marcus the last word here. I'm very sorry about
Next
that.
time.
But we
Never
are running
happens.
out of time, and that is all the time we have. But be sure to join us next week for more Politics Unplugged. Good night.